What if I told you that the fried green tomato, the dish that most Americans associate with the Deep South in general, was made famous specifically because of a cafe in Irondale, Alabama, 6 miles from Birmingham, that Fanny Flagg ate at as a child and wrote a novel about, and that the cafe is still there, still serving them? That Birmingham has a hot dog tradition so specific and so local that the people who grew up eating them spend years trying to recreate them after they move away and never quite get it right? Birmingham, the Magic City, Alabama's largest city. Built in 1871 at the intersection of two railroad lines, in a valley with iron ore on one side and coal on the other, and limestone between them, the three ingredients for making steel. In 1925, Robert Lee Gibson, known as Big Bob because he stood 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 300 pounds, was working for the L&N Railroad in Decatur, Alabama, 30 miles north of Birmingham. On weekends, he dug a pit in his backyard and cooked chicken over hickory coals for his neighbors. The smoke and the smell drew people from miles away. They ate off a makeshift table he made from oak planks nailed to a large sycamore tree. White sauce is a type of barbecue seasoning unique to Alabama. It was created by Robert Gibson, owner of Big Bob Gibson's BBQ in Decatur, in 1925. The sauce is a combination of mayonnaise, apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, black pepper, and salt, and was initially used only on chicken. Gibson's grandson, Don McLemore, told the Southern Foodways Alliance, Yes, we do say that my grandfather invented the white sauce, and no one has come forward to dispute that. Now, how he ever came up with the recipe, I don't have any idea. I wish I did know that. I would give somebody $1,000 if they could tell me the truth about how he started that. Many folks believe Gibson figured out that the fat in the mayonnaise would keep the bird's white meat from drying out after smoking for 3 hours over hickory. 4 generations of the Gibson family have built the reputation of their restaurant's legendary Alabama white sauce, which became widely available after they started bottling and selling at retail in the mid-1990s. In 1925, Bob Gibson served barbecue from a makeshift table made of oak planks nailed to a large sycamore tree in his backyard. Fresh out of his hand-dug pit came smoke and smells that drew people from miles away. "Your future is not in the railroad, but in barbecue," said Rosalind Mitchell. It was with that, Big Bob Gibson started a family barbecue restaurant tradition that has lasted over 80 years and 4 generations. In 1958, a man named John Big Daddy Bishop built a small cinder-block building in a hollow called Jerusalem Heights outside Tuscaloosa, 60 miles southwest of Birmingham, and opened a barbecue restaurant. The menu had one item, ribs. Not ribs and chicken, not ribs with sides. Ribs. Pork spare ribs, cooked over hickory coals, served with white bread and Big Daddy's sauce. A thin, vinegar-forward sauce with tomato and spice that was made to cut through the fat of the ribs rather than to coat them. Big Daddy Bishop was not a trained cook. He was a construction worker who built his own restaurant with his own hands and cooked ribs because he was good at cooking ribs. The simplicity was not a gimmick. It was the operation. One thing, done correctly, every day. Dreamland became one of the most legendary barbecue restaurants in Alabama. The cinder-block walls were covered with signatures and messages from visitors over decades. The ribs became the standard against which Alabama pork ribs are measured. John T. Edge of the Southern Foodways Alliance documented Dreamland as one of the essential Southern barbecue experiences. Dreamland expanded to Birmingham in the 1990s and has locations across the Southeast. The original Tuscaloosa location remains the spiritual home. Big Daddy Bishop died in 1997. His family and the subsequent owners have maintained the rib tradition. The white bread is still there. The one-item philosophy has expanded slightly. The ribs remain the point. The fried green tomato is a Southern food, but its national fame traces specifically to a cafe in Irondale, Alabama, 6 miles east of Birmingham, that a writer named Fanny Flagg ate at as a child, wrote a novel about in 1987, and that Hollywood made into a film in 1991. The Irondale Cafe opened in 1928. Bess Fortenberry, who ran it for decades, became the model for Flagg's character, Sipsy, in the novel Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. The cafe's fried green tomatoes, unripe green tomatoes dredged in cornmeal and fried in cast iron until the exterior is crackling and the interior is tart and yielding, became the most famous version of the dish in America after the film came out. The Irondale Cafe is still open. It still serves fried green tomatoes. It has been on the same site since 1928. The line of visitors who come because of the novel and the film has been running since 1991 and shows no signs of stopping. Fried green tomatoes appear on menus across the South, across the country, at gastropubs in cities where no one grows tomatoes. Every version traces its national awareness to a small cafe in a small Alabama town where a writer ate as a child and remembered clearly enough to put it in a book. In Evergreen, Alabama, a small town in the Pine Belt of South Alabama, 130 miles south of Birmingham, the Conecuh Sausage Company has been making a smoked pork sausage since 1947. The sausage is hickory smoked, slightly sweet, with a specific spice profile that people from Alabama describe the way people from other regions describe their own regional meats, as the correct version of what sausage should taste like. Conecuh sausage is sold at every Alabama grocery store, at every Alabama tailgate, at every Alabama breakfast table that takes breakfast seriously. It appears on the grill at SEC football games with a frequency that approaches the ceremonial. The Alabama state legislature has discussed designating it the official state sausage. Outside Alabama, Conecuh sausage is found in scattered locations and through mail order, ordered by Alabamians who have moved away and cannot find a substitute. The smoked sausage of a small town in the Alabama Pine Belt has become one of the most specific regional food identities in the state. Specific enough that the absence of it is what Alabama expatriates mention when they describe what they miss about home. In 1946, a man named Milo opened a hamburger stand in Birmingham. The burger he developed, a thin beef patty on a small bun, dressed with a specific sweet and tangy sauce that Milo developed and that the company has never fully disclosed, became the Birmingham burger. Milo's famous sweet tea has been sold alongside the burgers since the beginning, a strong, sweet, specifically Birmingham iced tea that the company now bottles and sells regionally. The combination of a Milo's hamburger and a Milo's sweet tea is the Birmingham fast food experience that people who grew up in the city describe with the specific nostalgia that fast food rarely earns. Milo's has remained a Birmingham institution for 78 years without expanding to the scale of a national chain. There are locations throughout the Birmingham metro area and in surrounding Alabama cities. Outside of Alabama, Milo's is essentially unknown. Birmingham considers this its own business. Every American city with a strong hot dog culture has its own specific style. Chicago has the Vienna beef dog with its specific toppings in the specific order. Detroit has the Coney. Birmingham has its own tradition, less formally documented than those, but no less specific to the people who grew up eating it. The Birmingham hot dog tradition centers on specific regional producers and specific preparations. The steamed bun, the specific mustard, the onion sauce, the chili that has a different flavor profile from Cincinnati chili or Kansas City chili because it evolved in Birmingham kitchens from Birmingham ingredients. The hot dog stands and lunch counters that developed the tradition over the 20th century are mostly gone, but the taste memory they left behind is one of the things Birmingham food writers and local historians work to document before the last people who remember the originals are gone. Alabama's fried chicken tradition is specific enough to its region that the differences, the spice profile, the coating, the oil, the specific cast iron technique, are real and significant to the people who grew up eating it, even if they are difficult to articulate to people who did not. The fried chicken of the Birmingham tradition draws on the West African frying techniques brought to Alabama by the enslaved people who built the state's food culture. The specific seasoning, heavier on black pepper, sometimes with a buttermilk marinade, sometimes with a simple flour dredge, and the specific cooking method distinguish the Birmingham fried chicken from the Nashville hot chicken or the Kentucky fried tradition. The church fried chicken, made for Sunday dinners and community suppers, is the institutional form. The women who mastered the technique passed it to their daughters, who passed it to theirs. The recipe is not written down in most families. It lives in the hands of the people who make it. Birmingham and the American South have a specific and passionate relationship with a cheese spread that the rest of the country has been slowly discovering for the past 2 decades. Pimento cheese, shredded sharp cheddar, cream cheese or mayonnaise, diced pimento peppers, salt, and cayenne, is the cheese spread of the Southern table. It appears on sandwiches, on crackers, on celery sticks, as a burger topping, as a dip. It is at every Birmingham cocktail party, every church social, every backyard gathering where someone brings a dish. The Birmingham version tends towards sharp cheddar, heavy on the Duke's mayonnaise, the Southern mayonnaise that Birmingham considers the only acceptable brand, with enough pimento and cayenne to produce a spread that is assertive rather than mild. The difference between a Birmingham pimento cheese and a grocery store pimento cheese is the difference between a home-cooked dish and a commodity product. Birmingham knows which is which. In 1898, Emma Rylander Lane published a cookbook in Clayton, Alabama, about 120 miles southeast of Birmingham, that included a recipe she called prize cake. The cake spread across Alabama and the Deep South and became known as Lane cake. Layers of white cake, separated by a cooked filling of egg yolks, butter, sugar, raisins, pecans, and bourbon, assembled into something that is simultaneously a celebration cake and a vessel for a significant amount of whiskey. Harper Lee immortalized the Lane cake into Kill a Mockingbird, set in Maycomb, Alabama, a fictional town based on Monroeville in southwest Alabama. Miss Maudie bakes one and the neighborhood children can smell the bourbon from outside. The Lane cake appears at every Alabama Christmas, every Alabama wedding, every Alabama occasion that calls for the most ambitious dessert in the Alabama repertoire. Technically, the Lane cake was invented in Clayton, not Birmingham. Alabama considers this a distinction without a meaningful difference. The cake belongs to the state. Birmingham was built in a single generation from a cornfield into an industrial city, and it built its food culture with the same speed and the same determination. The white sauce that Big Bob Gibson invented in 1925, for reasons nobody has been able to explain for 100 years, is now the defining characteristic of Alabama barbecue, the sauce that distinguishes it from every other regional tradition. The fried green tomatoes that a small cafe in Irondale served for decades became nationally famous because a writer remembered them clearly enough to put them in a novel. The Conecuh sausage that a small town in the Pine Belt has been making since 1947 is the sausage that Alabamians ship to themselves when they move away. This is a city that takes its food personally. The sauce recipes are family secrets. The correct mayonnaise brand is Duke's, and this is not a discussion. The fried chicken recipe lives in hands, not cookbooks. The Lane cake has enough bourbon in it that Harper Lee's characters could smell it from the sidewalk. Not every city's most famous barbecue sauce was invented by a man who offered $1,000 to anyone who could explain his own recipe. Not every city had its regional dish made nationally famous by a novel about a different subject. Not every city's sausage is ordered by mail by people who have moved away because they cannot find anything that tastes like home. Birmingham does things its own way. Has since two railroad lines crossed in a valley full of iron ore and coal and limestone in 1871, and someone decided to build a city there.